I'd like to thank Mr. Vincent D'Souza for organizing this Mylapore festival and the walk this morning. And then we're walking down the road and going to this place called Chitra, where we'll be seeing two Vishnu temples, the Adikeshava Perumal and the Srinivasa Perumal temples from the outside only. So I'll give you a very, very brief history of Mylapore. We are in one of the oldest areas of Chennai. In fact, one of the oldest areas of Tamil Nadu. We have every right to be proud of being here this morning, and those who live here in Mylapore should be prouder still. So the earliest history of Mylapore evidence, authentic historical evidence, comes not from sources within India but outside India. There was this traveler called Ptolemy, spelled P-P-O-L-E-M-Y, and in the 2nd century AD he came to Mylapore because this was a harbour, this was a port town, like Mylapore, like Nagapattinam, like many other port cities of Tamil Nadu. This was also a harbour, and he came here, and in his works he calls it Mylar Farm. That's the name he gives to Mylapore. So this was already a very well established town. Of the Alvars. The Alvars did not come to Mylapore, but Pei Alvar was born in Mylapore. We have a street there near Arundale Street, near Madhavan Perumal Kovil, which is a Pei Alvar Avatara Sthalam. He was born here. And Pei Alvar's date, according to historians and archaeologists, would be 5th or 6th centuries AD. So this very great Vaishnava devotee was born in Mylapore in the 5th or 6th centuries AD, and he had gone to the Tiruvallikeni temple, the Parthasarathi Swami temple, and sung about the god there. Subsequently, a contemporary of his called Thirumarishai Alvar, who hailed from Thirumarishai, which is near Pundamalli on the outskirts of Chennai, also came to the Parthasarathi Swami temple. And in the 8th century, Thirumangai Alvar came to the Parthasarathi Swami temple. Why I am mentioning that in connection with Mylapore is that in the verses, in the Pashurams of Thirumarishai Alvar, which we have the age of the Pallavas. We all know of the great Pallavas who ruled from Kanchipuram. And that was a time when many other Alvars and the Nayanmars or the Shiva Bhaktas were also here. And the Nayanmars, among them, 2 of them visited the Kapalishwara temple. That was Appar, who is also called Tirunavakarasar, and Thirunyana Sambandar. These 2 great Nayanmars visited the Kapalishwara temple, which was not here, but which was on the seashore. And there is clear evidence from the verses of the Nayanmars, especially Thirunyana Sambandar, to show that this temple was on the seashore, very clearly. Plus, in the 15th century, a great devotee of Muruga came here. His name was Arunagiri Nathar. This was in the Vijayanagara times. At that time, this temple was still on the seashore. In and out of temples. This is our problem. We don't have time to stand and stare. If we do, these walls will speak. Believe me, they will speak. So post Vijayanagara, time of the Nayak kings, yes, Mylapore was still there and it was flourishing. And then the invasion of the Golconda Sultan came, and Mylapore still continued. The Portuguese came, you know of Santome, and there is this Lust Church over there, which is a Portuguese legacy. And then the British came, and all through this, Mylapore has flourished. So where we are standing is not only a Punya Bhumi, it's a historical Bhumi. I mean, almost all the dynasties have come into Mylapore, and they've left little bits and pieces, traces of their presence over here. The Pandyas are also incidentally here, but we don't have traces of Pandyan history. Now, all of you turn that side. We have no clue. And later we will come back and have a closer look because we are time bound today. Okay, now, at times, those things that are hanging down are supposed to be imitations of the plant and flower. So whenever we go to a wedding or to any auspicious Hindu function, don't we have the trunk of a plantain tree here? And just in case you were not sure enough when passing the first set of Ganga and Yamuna, there's another set waiting for you at the other. There's a gate like Vaishnavite part of Mylapore. We've come from the Kapalishwara temple. We've come to the Vaishnava Agraharam. This is the place for the Vaishnavites. Before me and behind you is this famous tank called Chitra Kulam. Now Chitra means picturesque. Kulam is tank. This is as picturesque as you can get. Unfortunately, in a very, very, very dilapidated condition. It was even worse. And then philanthropists got together and they built a compound wall around it. Now, why I couldn't explain it there, but I'll explain over here. We look at a temple tank as some kind of a sacred space where the god is taken out in that festival, and he is rode around and around the tank. And we also know that in olden times, people had a bath in the tank and then they went to the temple. We know all that. But we've never realized that a temple tank is actually a water harvesting unit. Huge water harvesting unit, and that our ancients knew exactly what they were doing. So they selected a place next to a temple. Now, there are 2-3 ways they went about it. If you want to build a temple, a huge structure like a temple, you have to test the soil. You must know whether that place is clayey soil or sandy soil, or whether a temple can hold over there. So they used to dig a pit in front of the temple deep down to see if the soil was suitable. And that deep pit generally became a temple tank. Alright? And another reason why a temple tank was formed is to build a temple you need lots of mud and sand. Because this is how we go about building a temple. You take one block of stone and you put it in place. If you want the second block of stone on top, it's not possible to lift it and put it. So you will have to build a ramp. And then you push the second block of stone on top. Now that ramp will have to be made of mud. So where will you get the mud from? You have to dig it out of somewhere. And that place, more and more mud is needed for building a ramp as high as the Kapalishwara temple Gopuram. So you would need a lot of mud, and that would create a huge vacant space, and that vacant space would become your temple tank. Alright? Now having said that, they had inlets, INLETS, into the temple tank, so that water from the surrounding area would flow into it. And the water flowing into a temple tank through the inlet need not be just around the tank. For example, the main water source for the Kapali temple, whether you will believe me or not, is the PS Higher Secondary School's playground. So the water that collects from there goes through an underground channel and falls into the Kapalishwara temple tank. And that temple tank was dry for many years. Many of you may remember about 15 years ago, the tank was absolutely dry. Then they unclogged the channel there, leading from the PS High School, and then the water has flowed into this tank. This is not just rainwater collecting. That can never fill up a tank. Alright? So in olden times, once the tank was full in the monsoon months, suppose it started to overflow, what would happen is it would flood the areas around where people were living, and that would not be a good thing. So they had an outlet at a certain point, at a certain height in the tank, and the water would flow out of that outlet into a tank at a lower level nearby. And once that tank was full, it would go to another tank lower, and finally very little water would be let out into a river or into the sea. So once, you know how many tanks Mylapore once had? Just look, Chitrakulam is there, Kapalishwar Kovil is there. If you go down the road in Bazaar Street, the Virupakshishwara temple has a huge tank. Nobody knows it. It's inside the temple. Karneshwara temple also had a very big tank which is successfully closed, and now there's a Kalyana Mandapam on top. They don't even realize what they are doing. Once you cover all these water harvesting units, the subsoil water will disappear. So, once all these tanks are full, the houses around the tanks will never ever have water scarcity, because the seepage from the tanks will lead to the wells having water. So this is a very, very scientific thing. Just as an aside, for extra information, the Meenakshi temple tank, you all know it. It's a famous tank that's right in the middle of the temple. Now the IIT professors went there and studied the water harvesting unit inside the Meenakshi temple, and they found that every drop of rainwater that would fall inside the temple came to the Meenakshi temple tank. So not one drop of water that fell into the temple went out of the temple. And then there was an underground channel. If the tank got filled up, it would go to another tank outside the temple, and that would fill up. So this is a very, very scientific procedure we had in ancient India. Now in recent times, what we have done is we've blocked all the inlets coming into the flooded, and there's not a drop of water going into the Pushkarini. This is what the core of the temple is supposed to be very ancient, though we don't have inscriptions to substantiate what we are saying.